Despite being 28 years old, my wife and I have been together for what feels like a lifetime. Our love story began at the young age of 16, and we have never looked back since. It almost seems like fate brought us together, as we never broke up and eventually tied the knot 3 years ago. Our relationship has always been the envy of others, with many admiring our commitment to each other. People could see from a mile away that we were meant to be together, even when we were just teenagers. As time passed, things between us began to shift. Over the course of 1.5 to 2 years, subtle changes emerged in our relationship. Her family's problems brought about a noticeable change in her demeanor. She became increasingly distant, both emotionally and physically. She seemed to guard her phone with an intense protectiveness and spent more and more time with a male co-worker who had become a close confidant. The once warm and open intimacy we shared faded into a distant memory as she retreated into herself, leaving me wondering what had caused this sudden change in her. In the end, despite knowing it was wrong, I couldn't resist the urge to snoop through her phone. My gut had been telling me something was off for a while now, and my suspicions were confirmed when I stumbled upon incriminating texts between her and another man. It was like finding a dagger in my heart. Confronting her in early September, she didn't deny it. Instead, she owned up to the affair that had been going on for a year. As she confessed, it felt like each word she spoke drove a nail deeper into my chest. And to make matters even worse, they had been carrying on their illicit romance under our own roof. The thought of them lying together in the very bed where we had dreamed of raising our future children made my blood boil and tears fall. With tears streaming down her face, she apologized profusely and promised that the betrayal would never happen again. But I knew that in order for us to move on and rebuild trust, I needed her to completely cut off contact with the person she had cheated on me with. 2 months have passed, and yet they still talk occasionally, a constant reminder of the hurt and betrayal I have endured. She argues that it is unfair of me to ask her to end a close friendship, but I can't help feeling like I am constantly competing for her attention and loyalty. The pain and mistrust linger, poisoning our attempts at reconciliation. My mind is in a constant state of turmoil, unsure of what steps to take next. I desperately want to move forward, but the trust that once held our relationship together feels irreparable. Her continued communication with him only solidifies my fears that she prioritizes their relationship over ours. My gut is torn between wanting to forgive and needing to protect myself. It's overwhelming not having anyone to confide in. She explicitly asked me not to share our struggles with our friends. This isolation makes me feel even more lost and alone in this difficult situation. My apologies for the sudden outpouring of emotions, but I cannot help but put into words the turmoil that has consumed me. This is the first time I have articulated everything, and I am at a loss for how to move forward or deal with this overwhelming situation. I certainly did not anticipate such a strong reaction. While a few individuals seem to believe that cruel responses are appropriate when one's entire life is crumbling, I am grateful for those who offered helpful advice. Despite knowing what needs to be done, it feels like pulling off a band-aid, a painful yet necessary action that must be taken. I am going to call the lawyer I spoke to a few weeks ago tomorrow and see how he says I should approach the situation. Update number 1. After taking the time to reflect on all of your helpful advice, I knew it was time for an update. I mustered up the courage to call my lawyer and confide in my parents and close friends about the situation with my wife. With their support, I was able to gather the strength to tell her that I wanted a divorce. She begged and pleaded, promising to make things right and cut off all contact with the other person involved. Despite my doubts, I decided to give her one last chance to salvage what I believed we had. For the entire weekend, she showered me with promises and went above and beyond to show remorse for her actions. Although I remained skeptical, I couldn't deny that things seemed to be looking up. We spent the next month coexisting peacefully, although there were still underlying tensions. However, I noticed a positive change in her behavior. She was no longer glued to her phone and was making more of an effort to be attentive towards me. 2 weekends ago, she handed me her phone with an air of nonchalance, but my gut told me something was amiss. I suspiciously swiped up on her open apps, and there she was, engrossed in conversation with her affair partner on Instagram. My heart dropped to the pit of my stomach as I flipped out, demanding an explanation. She promised that he had just messaged her, and she told him that she could not talk. But I knew it was a lie as I read their conversation, detailing plans for that very night. Once again, I had been duped, lied to, and deceived by the person I trusted most. She assured me that she would finally block him, but added the caveat of wanting to say goodbye since he was just a friend. I refused to accept this excuse and demanded that she cut off all contact and block him immediately. Reluctantly, she agreed. 2 days later, I couldn't shake the feeling of doubt and asked if she had truly blocked him. To my dismay, she confessed that she had not yet followed through on her promise. At the end of my lengthy story, I proclaimed to her, without hesitation, that we were heading towards a divorce. The options laid themselves out before us, and she was left with a choice. Either agree to every single demand of mine in mediation or face the involvement of my lawyer and concede to my desires anyway. After some contemplation, she reluctantly agreed to the mediation process, which would soon commence. It had taken me far too long to reach this decision, but now I realize my self-worth and refuse to prolong this toxic relationship any longer. It is time for me to seek out true happiness and leave this chapter of my life behind. Despite my efforts to explain the situation and remind her of her own actions, she persists in trying to make me feel guilty. Her words sting like a sharp slap across the face, each one digging deeper into my heart. But I stand firm, determined not to bear the burden of blame for something that was not my doing. As I share my story with more friends and family members, I can feel the weight of this experience slowly lifting from my shoulders. It's not how I imagined my life unfolding, but amidst the pain and turmoil, I know that there is a silver lining waiting for me. I will emerge from this stronger and wiser, and one day I will be with someone who truly brings joy and happiness to my life. Update number 2. Hello everyone. It's been a while since I last shared an update here, but I wanted to give one final update on my story. Your support and advice have been invaluable throughout this process. After finally mustering the courage to tell my ex that we were getting a divorce, the gaslighting from her went into overdrive. She tried to blame me for everything, saying that I was the one ruining our marriage by giving up on it, and how sad it was that I was willing to let our relationship end this way. As if that wasn't enough, she also guilt-tripped me about taking away our dog's home and disrupting his life. But I didn't falter or let her get to me. I stayed strong and went through with divorce mediation. Thankfully, the mediation went smoothly and she agreed to everything I wanted. And now, after receiving notice from the courts just yesterday, I am officially a free man. It feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, and I can finally move forward with my life. Thank you all again for your support and advice during this difficult time. After just 3 months of starting mediation, we were able to sell the house. It had been a long and painful process, living together while waiting for the papers to be signed and sealed. The gaslighting continued during this time, her words cutting deep as she tried to shift the blame onto me and paint herself as the victim. But I refused to engage with her toxic behavior and instead focused on selling the house and moving on with my life. She moved out 1 month before the final closing date, leaving behind an empty space that felt simultaneously peaceful and lonely. I took some time to stay with my parents and regroup, reflecting on our relationship with weekly therapy sessions. It became clear how one-sided and toxic it truly was, with me constantly putting my own needs aside in an attempt to make things work. My therapist suggested that she may have borderline personality disorder, which explains so much about her behavior and patterns. It ran in her family, and now everything started falling into place. With therapy, I also began working on underlying issues that led me into such a toxic relationship. I am determined to never ignore warning signs again. In addition to taking care of my mental health, I also recommitted to my physical well-being. Over the past 3 months, I have lost 15 pounds and have gotten back into running. In fact, I am currently training for a 10K race. This journey has shown me the power of self-care and how important it is to prioritize your own happiness above all else. At the start of this month, I eagerly unpacked my belongings and settled into my own place in New York City. After years of being consumed by work and neglecting friendships, I am now actively reconnecting with friends who I lost touch with. And for the first time in my life, I have entered the dating world, although with little success at this point. But amidst these personal triumphs, the biggest victory came when I was promoted at work a few weeks ago, an accomplishment that I had tirelessly worked towards. Mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially, I am in a much better place than I have been in years. Her revealing her true colors through her affair was ultimately the greatest favor she could have unknowingly done for me. Initially, I chose not to disclose the details of the affair to our mutual friends as I feared it would jeopardize our mediation process. However, now that the divorce is finalized and all ties are severed, I am ready to share the truth about who she truly is and what she did. It is a daunting task, but it is necessary for those in our lives to know the reality of our relationship's demise. After all of this, I've come to realize that things will eventually get better. We should not blame ourselves for being betrayed by someone we loved. Instead, let this be a turning point for us to strive towards becoming the best versions of ourselves. This may be my final post here, as my healing journey continues on to a new chapter. It is time to move past dwelling on what this whim did to me and focus on my own growth. Thank you for all the support, whether it was through kind words or tough love that I needed to hear. Your presence has made a significant impact on my journey towards healing. As we reach the end of this tale, it's clear that the road to self-discovery is neither straight nor predictable. It's filled with unexpected twists and turns, each challenging our resilience and pushing us towards new horizons. Through this story, we've seen how embracing change, facing adversities head-on, and prioritizing personal well-being can transform obstacles into stepping stones. Remember, it's not just about moving on, but moving forward with a stronger, wiser, and more hopeful perspective on life. If you have enjoyed today's episode, remember to like this video and subscribe to WTF Media for more Reddit stories in the future. Thank you for joining me on this profound journey. Until next time, keep seeking your truths and turning your trials into triumphs.